Over the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to teach myself Python, and one of the first things I tried to do was to create a choose your own adventure game. And a lot of the tutorials I saw had these crazy, crazy nested ifs, and as a developer, nested ifs just drive me crazy. And the longer your story, the more nested ifs there are. And so basically, I wanted to write an engine that would be scalable, that literally once you wrote the base code, all you'd have to do is add the chapters and the choices. And so let me just take a minute and show you the engine I came up with. All the code for this will be up on the GitHub that is in the description in case you miss it or miss anything as you're following along. But let me show you what I'm talking about. You know, the choose your own adventure stories from when we were kids, and my format, I've got this delay print method that kind of prints it out like it's out on a typewriter. And keep in mind, you can make your text as long as you want it to be. I just have just short little sentences just to show you the choices. So you're in a clearing, you're all alone. Your choices are you can run back home, you can look for firewood. I'm going to hit 2 to look for firewood. It says you scrounge around for firewood and you come across a snake, which I misspelled. Gives me choices. I have logic in here that if somebody puts in something that's not valid, it tells it's an invalid choice. And also have logic that once you get to the end of the story, that it actually stops the story. And so you know, it tells you the final chapter, and then it tells you you die, game over. Would you like to try again? And gives you that option as well. So, and when I hit no, it exits out. So let's take a look at the code that we have. We got a couple of classes, we've got one method, and then the rest of it is going to be um, just an engine that we're working on. So we want to start by importing OS, system, and time. We're importing OS so that we can interact with Windows. We're importing sys because that's where our print or write method exists. And we're importing time because for this delay method, I am going to have a sleep function. So what we're going to do is, while this is kind of out of order on my screen, what I would like you to do is I want us to start looking at this delay print method. And so just def, which is how we do a function in Python, def delay print. We're going to pass in a variable some text, colon, make sure you tab over. Your IDE should take care of that for you. But anyway, and then we're going to actually step through every character in the text we're sent one by one um, and print it out. So for each character in some text, we are going to system standard write the character. And what that is so like if I pass the word text, text, then for T it's going to do this, for E it's going to do this, for X it's going to do this, for T it's going to do this. And so it's going to print the character, and then it's going to do a flush. And it's important we do a flush because the write method buffers data, and so we want to make sure it prints one letter at a time. So we're telling it, hey, you got to flush that buffer every character. And then we have this time sleeps in seconds. For this tutorial, I want mine to type really fast, so I've chosen 0.05 seconds. And so that's our method that we're going to call to print. So let's jump up to the top and let's create a class called chapter. And in that class, we're going to initialize a chapter, def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. We're going to pass in self, chapter text, and is ending. And so the chapter text will be like the story you're telling, and is ending will be a Boolean, true or false. It says, is this a ending happy, sad, or otherwise, or is it going to have choices? And so if it's true, it's the end of the game. You'll have to start over again. If it's false, there'll be choices. And so in this definition, we're going to have self.chapterText equals the chapter text we pass in. We're going to create a array or collection of choices. So self.choices, and we instantiate that by doing equal square brace. And then we're going to have self.isEnding equals isEnding. and that's going to do the definition of our chapter. Now, before we move on, we're going to need to add our choices class. And so what we're going to do is, if you'll go below your chapter class, make sure you come out from under your chapter, because like where your definitions are built under the chapter, this is another class, so it has to be on the same line as the chapter class. We're going to do class choice, and we're going to do definition. We're going to initialize it, underscore, underscore, init, underscore. We're going to take self. We're going to take choice text and go to chapter. And so your choice text is going to be, if I'm in a clearing in the woods, my choice text might be, do you want to go home? And then my go to chapter would be whatever chapter deals with going home. Okay, so now that we've built our choice class, let's go back up under our chapter. So we got our first definition here. We're going to build a second definition and make sure it's lined up with your definition. And it's going to be definition add choice. And this is how we're going to add choices to our chapters. And so we're doing it this way so that we can have 1 or 100 choices. It doesn't matter. The code will deal with it. And so all we have to do is we're going to pass in self, and we're going to pass in a choice. And what we're going to do, just under here, self.choice.append, and then in parentheses choice. And so basically what we're saying is every time we call add choice, whatever choice is passed in is going to go up here into the choices for that chapter. And the self, in case you're not familiar with Python, self is how it knows which chapter, which object we're dealing with. Okay, and we're having another definition under chapter, and this is how we're going to print our chapters. And so make sure it's lined up with def, print chapter. We're going to pass in is self, colon, make sure you tab over. Again, your IDE should be taking care of that for you. First thing we're going to do is we're going to call os.system, and we're going to pass into that in parentheses, in quotes, CLS. Basically, that's just going to clear the screen. So whenever we call this, we want the first thing to do is to clear the screen. Then it's going to call that delay print method that we created, and it's going to pass in the chapter text for the chapter we're in, so that, hey, you're in a clearing, you're all alone. That's going to be printed here, and then it's going to delay print your choices are. And you'll notice this /n, if you're not familiar with programming, /n is just a way to let the programming language know we want to go to a new line whenever this text finishes. So whatever prints next will be printed on a new line. And then we're going to create this index variable, and basically that's just because we're going to number our choices. And again, we're building it this way so it doesn't matter if we have 1 or 100 choices. And so for each choice that's in self choices, so whatever choices are in the chapter we're in, for each one of those, it's going to delay print the index and then the choice text. And then it's going to add 1 to the index. And so let's say we have 3 choices. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to go get the first choice, and it's going to say 1 colon and then the choice text for that. Then it's going to add and make index 2, and then it's going to say 2 colon and then the second choices text. And then we're going to add 1 to it, and then it's going to say 3 colon and then the choices text for the third choice. And then we're going to have one more definition, and this is the one that basically just makes sure it deals with if they put in a 1 or a 2 or whatever number, we're going to return to them the right chapter to go to. If they put in anything invalid, a number that we don't have a choice for, or if they pass in a letter or a word or a character that's not a number, then we're going to deal with that and give them a sorry, you put in an invalid text. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do def validate choice, pass in self, and we're going to pass IDX, which is an abbreviation I'm using for index. And then we're going to put this in a try. That way, we're looking for an integer to be passed, and if a integer is not passed, it's going to throw an error, because it's going to say if we pass an F, it's going to say that's an invalid type. Or if we go down here to the self choices and they pass us index 3, but we only have 1 choice, then it's going to throw an error that index is out of range. And so by putting in this try, it'll go in this accept, and we can just return to them none. Nothing matches your choice. But if there is, like if they send us a 1 and there is a first choice, then we're going to return to them the go-to chapter that it needs to go to next. And if you'll notice, I have a -1 in here. Well, actually, first I'm making sure that my code treats the IDX that's passed in as an integer and not as a word or a string. So, like if I get past a 6, by default, Python's going to look at that 6 like it's a string, but I want to make sure it treats it like an integer. And then arrays in most programming languages, they start counting at 0. So our first choice is actually 0. Our second choice is actually 1. So if somebody passes 1, we need to convert that to a 0. If they pass us a 2, we need to convert it to a 1. That's why that -1 is there. And then whatever it is, we pass into choices. If choice 1 is valid, then we're going to return the choice 1 go-to information. And so that's all the definitions that we need to set up for these two classes. Again, this code is going to be in the GitHub repository that is in the description, and you can get that code, you can follow along, or you can get that code and you can compare to what you've done to make sure that you're getting the code right. Now, in this first one, here's where I'm creating chapters, and I just have a note to remind you that we passed the chapter text and a true false as to whether it's an ending or not. And so I name myself chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. You name your variables, whatever helps you when you lay out your flow chart of what chapter goes to what chapter, or what event leads to what choice. And so I've just created 4 chapters. I've got you are in a clearing, you are all alone. Again, the slash ends just tell it that I want to start a new line after each one. And then I'm passing false, saying that this is not an ending, that there are going to be choices that I add here. I have a chapter 2, you are back home. You climb into bed. I've got a true here because this is going to be an ending of the game. I've got chapter 3, you scrounge around for wood to make a fire. You come across a snake, and I hate when I accidentally hit the print screen button. You come across a snake, and this is false because I'm going to give you choices here. And then I have chapter 4, you swing a stick at a snake, it bites you, it was poisonous, you die, and obviously that's going to be an ending, so I have true. Now then I've got to create the choices that I'm going to give people and where they go. So I've got a choice. I'm calling it go home, and it says you can run back home. And if you'll remember back down here, when I run the game, it says you're in a clearing, you're all alone. Your choices are you can run back home. You can look for firewood. So here's where I'm making those. Choice to go home. You can run back home. That's what's going to be presented as a choice. You can look for firewood. That's presented as a choice. And I tell it, if they make this choice, it goes to chapter 2. If they make this choice, it goes to chapter 3. I've got another choice. Choice attack snake. And then it says you can grab a log and smash the snake, and that goes to chapter 4. Okay, so now we've made our chapters. We've made our choices. Now I need to add those choices to a chapter so the code knows, hey, if I'm on this chapter, what are my choices? And so in chapter 1, I'm adding the choice, you can go home. In chapter 1, I'm also adding the choice, you can go make a fire. And as you can see, choice go home, choice make a fire. And then if I choose 2 down here, that actually takes me to chapter 3. And again, it says you come across a snake. Your choices are you can run back home. You can grab a log and smash the snake. I'm reusing this choice. The choice to go back home, I'm adding it to chapter 3. Chapter 3, I'm adding the choice to go attack the snake. Okay, and so this is all scalable. You just keep adding chapters, you keep adding choices, and then you keep adding the choices to the chapter. And again, I would tell you the best way to do this is flow chart your story, so you can make sure as you're going through, you are making sure you're adding all the choices to the right chapters. Okay, so now that's the scalable part. This right here is the rest of the code that you need for this engine. Okay, game continue equals true. It's just a Boolean that says, are we playing the game? Are we not? As long as it's true, we're going to play the game. If it's ever false, Python's going to quit the game. And then we just have this thing. We're going to use this variable current chapter to keep track of whatever chapter we're on. And to start the game, we're setting it to chapter 1. So here's our while loop. While game continues is true, and it is true because we set it here. As long as it's true, it's going to keep looping through this little bit of code right here. And this right here is everything you need to make this game engine work. So if the current chapter is not a game-ending chapter, it is going to print the text of the chapter, and it's going to print the choices, and it's going to look for you to make choices. If ever the current chapter is ending true, then it's going to put you into the end game text. Okay, so let's do if not current chapter is ending, colon, tab over, current chapter dot print chapter parentheses. So that calls that method up here under chapter, print chapter, where it's going to pass itself whatever the current room it is, and then it's going to go through this code, it's going to clear, it's going to write the chapter text, it's going to loop through the choices and give you the choices. So current chapter, print chapter. The next line, we're gonna get input from the user. We do that. We create a variable user input. It equals input. In parentheses, we're sending the text that we want to print on the screen. Enter the number of your choice, and then it waits for a response. So I'm going to take that response, and I am going to send it to the validate choice. So the user input is going to go up here to validate choice. If they send me F, it's going to go here. It's going to try to convert it to an int. It's going to say a type exception. It's going to return none. Back down to here. And so when this right here is going to check if response. If we get none, it's going to go into this else, and it's going to delay print. We use an F because this is formatted text, which basically means we're not just passing text like we are here. We're going to pass a variable, and we're going to return to them what they inputted. So, and that's in a curly brace. And so basically this is going to say, like down here, if I do F, it's going to return F is an invalid choice. And so, but let's say if I up here, when it says user input, I press a 1. Well, it's going to go up here and go response, current chapter, validate choice. User input's 1. It's going to pass it up here. It's going to try to convert that to a 1 to an int, which it can. 1 minus 1 is 0, and it's going to say, is there a choice in this array of choices at index 0? If there is, it's going to return choices and the go-to. And down here, if we get a response, we are going to set that the current chapter to that go-to chapter. And this is going to let us run through, no matter how many chapters we have, this code is going to run through it. And then we get lined up with this first if is our else. And this is in the scenario where we've hit a chapter like chapter 2 that isn't ending. It's going to print that chapter's information, or here we are here. Yeah, so run back home. It's going to print, you go back home, you climb in bed, the game is over. So it prints you are back home, you climb in bed. Then it delays, prints the game is over. Would you like to try again? I need to add a slash in here. We're going to take user input again. We're asking yes or no. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the user input and I'm going to take it to lower. That way, and I say, does it equal a lowercase y? And in that way, if they pass me a capital Y or a lowercase y, it's going to match. And so either capital Y or lowercase y is going to set the current chapter to chapter 1. And when the code loops back around, chapter 1's is ending is false, so it's going to go back into play the game. But if they tell me no, and again, user input to lower, I'll take a capital N, lowercase n, it's game continues equals false. This while loop will cease to exist. So if I hit no enter, it exits out of that while loop, and game over. And then if they do anything besides a wiring in, I'm going to delay print. Hey, whatever you inputted is an invalid choice, just like I've done everywhere else. And that's my quick and easy, scalable, choose your own adventure code. Again, the code is available on GitHub. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I plan to do another video on how to do this in Pygame so we can have a prettier interface. But I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, and would appreciate feedback. And I thank you for your time.